It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we move into a Thursday, we're back from our one-day vacation. Gary, how are you?
Good. We just so people know, because a lot of people like what happened to you guys. We just had very unexpected support staff sickness yesterday.
Yes, right. And everybody is okay, and but we just ran into one of those things that has happened, and we just unfortunately. Everybody is kind of shorthanded. It's almost like the service industry, but in radio, except for without all the great food, basically. And so we thank everyone, though, for reaching out. Hey, missed you guys, and we miss you guys, too. We miss being here when we're not able to be on. But here we are. Wow, lots going on Wednesday. What a day. What a day. So the border bill. Looks like, how about no?
Well, interesting, because you hear Senate Republicans, because this was a bipartisan bill.
Yeah.
The bipartisan bill
Yeah.
goes down to defeat. Well, the defeat was bipartisan.
Well, right. The media made it out like the Republicans defeated the bill. And that's a lot of the stories were like, no, there were actually, as you were going through in the pre-show meeting, a number of Democrats who voted against.
Well, you had 4 Democrats and then Bernie Sanders. He's viewed as an independent. Mm-hmm. So 5, but we know he's a liberal.
Yeah.
But Bernie voted against it because he didn't want any money going to Israel.
Right.
Because he's a Hamas supporter. So
yeah, exactly.
Sorry, we don't mess around with this.
Nope, it's one or the other.
Right. It's and we have from the very beginning. It's one or the other. You can't look at what happened here and say Israel's at fault.
Right.
If you do, you're just one of the radicals. There's the radicals and there's everybody else.
When you use your power, and we can have the discussion about should we be supporting Israel or any other nation to defend themselves and all of that. Israel, our strongest ally, and my vote is yes, we should be. But
in the Middle East.
Right. But here's the thing. When you use your power to restrict their ability to defend themselves from terrorists, sorry, you're pro-Hamas, full stop.
Well, and especially when you support the president, have said nothing negative about the president ensuring that Iran has billions and billions of dollars to use against to use against the United States and United States interests.
Yep. Yeah.
But so here's my question. And by the way, I'm not expecting an answer. But what the hell happened inside the Republican Senate? What happened? You had, remember, just a couple of days ago, where they believe they have at least possibly 12 Republicans that will be against it.
You're right.
Well,
for it.
For it, yeah. I'm sorry. No. They were saying we may have 12, Republicans that are against the bill. And there were a lot more that were against the bill than just 12. Lindsey Graham voted against it. Mm-hmm. Cornyn voted against it. People that we weren't sure. So just the other day, I was reading the story. They said at least 12, and I said, there's got to be more than 12.
Well, because I saw one story that said, just a few days ago, said 20. But I don't know where they got their head count from.
Yeah. Well, it definitely changed. The head count changed, but the first head count I got was 12 Republicans, and all of a sudden it was like, boom, and all of a sudden, look at the McConnell switch on this.
Well, no, that's the thing. There is no head count. It's like the word framework. It means nothing. We have the framework. No, you don't. You don't have anything. You have zero. So when they do a head count, it means nothing. The real head count is when they vote on it.
Right. But McConnell helped negotiated the bill
Yeah.
and voted against it. Did you hear that Langford in his speech said that some powerful individual
Oh, give me a break.
threatened him? It's like, if you're going to use that kind of Democrat crap, then you better name the person. If
Yeah,
you're going to say that,
don't play
name
it
the
that way.
person.
If you've been threatened, whether it's a political threat or whatever, if you believe it's worth mentioning to the American people, then say the name. Don't beat around the bush. If you're going to accuse somebody, do it. Otherwise, shut up.
But overall, I mean, I've seen a lot of panic from people, and I'll just say because I don't know if it's conservatives or Republicans or whatever, say the Republicans have now given the Democrats the advantage on immigration. I don't agree with that. And I don't agree with that because I believe it is easily explainable where you simply say that it should be zero.
Yeah.
Not 5,000 a day. It's interesting because I had a discussion with somebody yesterday on this. Well, Republicans want to get to zero. It's not possible to get to zero. Well, then you keep the border closed.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you be against that?
Mm-hmm.
Then you keep it closed. And this person did not know. I said, do you understand? The argument is that this bill is weaker than current law.
Yeah.
And the president has not abided by the current law.
Right.
So what makes you think? Remember, Mayorkas, and the other thing is he said, for Mayorkas and impeachment, he said, well, it's just policy. I said, well, look, Eric and I have said this. We haven't talked about it in a while, but I wasn't for, the impeachment of Mayorkas, not because he's not lying about it, but the fact is it sits at the feet of his boss.
Yeah, it doesn't change anything with the administration.
Right.
Next guy in that seat or gal is going to do the same thing.
Right, exactly. So now, but there was a solid point about, I think, lying to Congress. He absolutely was lying.
Yeah,
when he said the border was secure, he's lying.
Yeah.
And when I told the press, I said, look, the one thing, because normally impeachment, before the Democrats changed it with Trump, impeachment used to be if you committed bribery.
Yeah.
That's what it was for.
Right.
And so again, the Republicans, again, impeachment is a political process. It's not a criminal justice process. So we've seen with the Democrats moving it in a particular direction, making it where impeachment doesn't mean anything anymore. Yeah. That's the whole point, because Mayorkas wasn't going to leave. It's just basically impeachment has become the new censure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it's become.
Right.
Because you weren't going to get he wasn't going to be removed from office, for that. So what are you trying to do? The only thing that you can try to do, and I was explaining this to somebody yesterday, I said, he said, yeah, but sometimes nothing gets done. I go, well, you're expecting that in a world that is a constitutional republic, that is, under the umbrella of a democracy. We want to make sure people understand that we know this is not a direct democracy. We know it's a constitutional republic. But the fact is, there are times when you get gridlock when nothing gets done. Mm-hmm. And I said, and this is where I stopped this person in their tracks. I said, you make it sound as if bipartisanship is some kind of a magic potion that will ensure that the country runs right. Said every major problem we have today, which really comes from the spending that we have, has been caused by bipartisanship. Yep. The debt we have today is caused by bipartisanship. So let's not use these words. Let's talk about the actual issues and where we are as a country today. And let's stop with if we had bipartisanship means diddly and squat.
Working together. We need people working, because you'll hear the populists every election season. We need, we need is people that are willing to work with, the other side. They're willing to work if they're willing to work no, because every single time it means that our very foundation, conservative principles, are going to be compromised And that has been the case for, well, I don't know, as long as I can remember. The only time the Republicans have ever been, and it was temporary, really, just tapping the brakes, been able to slow the spending train down was welfare reform. And again, we're still here at this point. There was a valiant effort when you look during the Reagan years, when you look for the class of 94, when you look at certain moments. But again, those were kind of the last stops. Those were because since then it's been full on, and this reaching across the aisle thing, no.
And you saw the effort. I don't know how long it's going to last because this is what we look for. Do Republicans have the better argument? And the administration is trying to sell you that Biden has been this helpless pedestrian at the side of the road, and he can't control what's happening in traffic.
Yeah.
As if he's just some pedestrian and not a traffic police officer.
Right.
Well, he is the traffic police officer.
Right.
He actually can control the traffic out there. So they're trying to sell you that Biden has been helpless and a bystander here in all of this, just waiting for Congress to give him laws that he can enforce. And that's a load. Every Democrat listening right now knows that's a load of horse manure.
It is.
They all know it. And so the argument is easy for Democrats or Republicans to win. And on the Mayorkas thing, to me, I look at it and go, well, I think the average independent, if you say, look, this shows you we couldn't get this through. This shows you how bad it is in Congress where when you come to the not immigration, but the impeachment of Mayorkas. Mm-hmm. This just shows you how radical it is. Remember, Mayorkas has been lying to Congress. You win that political argument because everybody knows, every Democrat knows that Mayorkas lied to Congress.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that the border is not secure.
Right.
Every Democrat listening right now knows when he said under oath that the border is secure that he was lying.
Right.
Everyone knows that.
Right.
And so we know where the blame goes. And they're trying to wipe out in one day everything that has happened the last 3 years.
Right.
Because Democrats believe, and a lot of times they're right on this, but I believe you can defeat this one. Democrats believe they can do anything they want, and if that in one day they can totally rewrite history, and the public will go for it because the public cares about what's happening today, not what's happened in the past.
Right.
But the fact you win this bill by saying, wait a minute, you want us to pass a bill that's weaker than the laws, immigration laws that we have right now that Biden will not enforce.
Right.
And it's a lie when they tell you, and they've been saying this. It's a lie when they say that he can't enforce the border and secure the border without this. The laws are in effect already. And they've been coming out. Here's what he did on day one. Here's what he did on February 2nd of 2021. Here are the executive orders that he put out. Mm-hmm. And you really can't win it. And how you can tell, I think one of the great barometers is when you sit in a certain day and the Democrats are trying to push a particular message and you go to the mostly liberal White House press corps and they're bombarding Karine Jean-Pierre with the questions that should be asked, that the American public is saying, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Biden didn't have control of this. He had control of this for the last couple of years. Here's what he did here. And she couldn't answer the question. She was going through the binder yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I mean, the binder movement was like, it almost looked like a baseball card in the spokes of a bicycle.
Well, the breeze from the pages going so fast actually was blowing her hair back. That's how bad it was. And by the way, for those who were saying that, well, now the GOP is given a political advantage to the Democrats, if you believe that, then you have no idea what was in the bill. Because the permanent political and powerful advantage on the border that the Democrats would have had if this thing had been passed into law would have been a permanent hole in our border, at times tying the hands of the president and giving way too much discretion to his administration. That's something you missed. If you're saying the GOP gave the Democrats an advantage, you're not paying attention.
Well, they're hoping for the Democrats always hope to win an election based on ignorance.
Absolutely.
866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Tires command a lot of attention. As a top expense for drivers and a leading cause of CSA violations, any tire maintenance practice that can help extend tire life is worth consideration. Consider tire balancing, which can set you up for savings and a smoother ride before your tires touch the highway. Tire balancing corrects an uneven distribution of weight in tires and wheel assemblies, but the trick is to be proactive and not reactive. Conduct routine pre- and post-trip tire inspections and pay special attention to inflation. Tires with too little air will wear prematurely and create more resistance, which can result in increased fuel consumption, a harsher ride, and ultimately lead to a blowout.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here this morning. I'm reading this here. This came out. Let me see. Okay, this is when they weren't sure. This is Ronna McDaniel reportedly stepping down as RNC chair. Spokesperson pushes back, but it looks like this was written 2 nights ago. So it looks like as of yesterday, though, it looks like that's what is happening.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Did you see Matt Gaetz? See who Matt Gaetz publicly came out in favor of? That would be the best person for the RNC.
I didn't see that.
Kevin McCarthy.
I'm going home.
But here's
I'm going. Bye.
But here's the part that got to me.
I'm leaving.
Here's the part that got to me. He just said, the head of the RNC, isn't about policy. Basically, and I'm sitting there, I'm reading this going, what is he talking about? He said basically, as we've talked about, when we talk about the head of the RNC, probably the first thing they want you for is to be an effective fundraiser. But the second thing is, every Republican, including Ronna McDaniel, has been on promoting what the Republican Party is about. She's been on Sunday morning news shows. They talk policy all the time, and they push a particular policy that all Republicans might not agree with, because there can be an issue out there that Republicans may agree 80-20, and odds are she's going to take that 80. The head of the RNC is going to take that 80%.
Yeah,
because you're pushing what the majority believe, but you don't always push what all Republicans believe, including what Matt Gaetz just dealt with the ouster of McCarthy, where he was in the minority of Republicans. And so I'm shaking my head going, is this his form of mea culpa?
Okay, because you're breaking this news to me. It was a very busy day for me yesterday. And it's a long story. I'm just don't trust your dry cleaner. That's all I'm saying. But it was, very busy. I did not see that, but this is my initial reaction to that. So you're getting it fresh. Always fresh reactions on Red Eye Radio, 100% guaranteed. It sounds like a mea culpa move. I'm going to be blamed. Matt Gaetz, I'm going to be blamed for the implosion of the GOP leadership, basically in the House, or people perceive it that way, or whatever. And I need to roll this back. By the way, that doesn't help roll this back, right? So when you walk this theory, my reaction through, it doesn't really work at all, because it only makes it worse. You could have said George Santos needs to be the head of the RNC, and I wouldn't have near the reaction.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio. from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. For a second there, I went, morning? Well, no, wait a minute. Morning? It's night.
It is morning.
I know.
It is a.m.
I know, but when I said
you-
morning,
oh,
I go,
you-
when is it morning? Is it night? What is it here?
Oh, you were questioning whether it was morning. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think I think the Illuminati has confused us with that for long enough.
Well, it was a bizarre day yesterday because one of the bizarre things was, because you just don't see this, on True Social, and it was on Trump's Twitter page, which is basically what Trump posts on True Social.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Right.
And when he came out in favor of, being okay with Bud Light, and I went through, now this is the time that I did it, it might have changed by now, but I went through the first 50 comments where, I agree with you a lot, but I completely disagree with you on this one. I was amazed at the pushback
Interesting.
to Trump on the whole Bud Light thing. He says, let's give him a second chance and everything else. And it's just like most Republicans and conservatives would probably say, why?
Yeah.
Why? Will they change if there's not pressure? Will any of these companies change their wokeness? Will any of them change if there are no consequences?
No.
And I'll say that. Let's put it let's move from business. Let's move to Ivy League colleges. Will the Ivy League colleges change even with the pressure that's being applied upon them? They might, but it would be very slowly. One of the things you and I said about the presidents being fired, well, if you fire a president, the system still continues. You just have another person in there.
Yeah.
We know how the left works on that. And so that was some of the response to Trump. Why are you doing this? This makes and it's funny because of all the things that you might look at that his supporters might look at and say, well, okay, it's just the Bud Light or this thing is more serious and this is the Bud Light, it's just Bud Light, let this one go. They didn't.
Right.
And so that was part of the bizarre day yesterday of going through the news going, that's unique. That's different.
Number one, is it still the case that Trump has never had a drink? He doesn't drink any alcohol.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's
still the case.
Yeah.
So it's everybody, and all the beer drinkers are going, "Hey, no, we're still not okay with Bud Light." If you're going to not drink, it's okay that you choose to not drink Bud Light, but we're going to also not drink Bud Light because we drink. I heard the talk surrounding their new campaign, Bud Light and everything else. It's Super Bowl time. And I do think it's interesting that they completely left out Taylor Swift from the ad campaign. And that's another horrible move for them, clearly. But it's not. There are things that aren't going to change with this radical agenda being put forward. And Trump, there are many things, and it may be the nature of how people disagree with him or his supporters. Hey, man, I'll vote for you, but I disagree with you here, or whatever. It's not a game changer, but it is a very, as you point out, a very interesting snapshot of a situation that the radicals have put into motion, and the American people have firmly said no, and furthermore, no. And when you say you're coming for our kids over my dead body, and that battle is forever. I mean, you and I, we were talking about it, and I said it from the beginning. We've talked about the radical transgender, liberal transgender movement, and then now introducing in recent years children and children's rights to self-mutilation or making the choice to get genital mutilation surgery, and the parents don't have the right, and all of this, those radical thoughts, those radical agendas are all a part of that, and something that I think Bud Light missed, and you and I were talking about it, because the conversation was if you think about what beer is, it's often a couple of people, talking, and then the beer's on basically the centerpiece, and then they wanted the beer to be about the topic and controlling the topic and changing the tone of the conversation, and you don't get to do that, and you don't get to change the morals of a nation in doing so.
Well, I mean, that's part of what was brought up. There were a number of people that almost mirrored exactly what you said there and said, Mr. Trump, I agree with you on most things, but don't you understand it? And you and I said this a long time ago about the Democratic Party. There's two things about where the Democratic Party is going that is just pure insanity. The one is identity politics. You judge people by groups and not as an individual. And they have owned that, which is where you get racism from. That leads directly to racism.
Right.
When you say we're going to judge people by groups.
Right.
In fact, that many people say that is, that actually is racism. When you don't look at somebody and say, I'm going to judge you on your individual merits. No, I'm going to judge you on your skin color or a particular demographic that you're in. That's owned by the Democratic Party. That's owned.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is and that's so incredibly a radical position to hold in 2024, where you don't treat people as individuals, where you still are looking at to out there have and I'll call it the generic oppressor and the generic victim, that you constantly are attempting to get more victims and more oppressors.
Right.
That's really a radical and hateful position to hold in 2024, yet the Democrats fully embrace that. That's not fringe.
Right.
And the other thing that is in fringe is the fact that the Democratic Party believes that a man can be a woman if the man says so.
Right.
And we have said you can have all compassion for people because who knows what goes in on their what happens in their minds and why they think the way that they do.
Right.
And so you can have the dysphoria that exists there and believe you're something. And I can sympathize with the hardships that you're going through. And we know there's hardships for people that believe that they are a different sex. We understand it, and we understand that it causes harm when you think that way, just from the attempted suicide rate. Right. So you can still have a tremendous amount of compassion for people that find themselves in that position. Because remember, the argument from the Democrats was never, was never, well, you're right, it's untrue, you can't do it. It was, their argument was, if you don't agree with them, they'll commit suicide.
Right.
It was never based. Nobody's going to actually address and say, yes, a man can be a woman if the man says so.
Right.
They'll never address that. They simply said, and that's the acknowledgement of the dysphoria and the results that come, from that in, if you want to say, psychology, if you want to...
well, it's a true mental health
physiology,
issue.
Whatever, yes. That's why it's in there, right?
It is a common thread for individuals in that category. So it is common enough to warrant a lot more attention, and the left wants to ignore that part of it.
Right, and so, but there's such incredibly radical positions when you actually, and so the base of it, and this is what some of the Trump supporters were telling him. I'm sure he doesn't read all of them, but they were telling him, says, don't you understand this is more than just a beer and what they did. You've got to look at this. It's sort of like what's going on in Israel right now. People are trying to hold positions that they feel we cannot be criticized for. Well, Israel's committing a genocide. That's untrue.
Right.
Israel doesn't care about these civilians. It's untrue. Now, that's what you're trying to sell, which sounds like you're compassionate, but is it true? Mm-hmm. And the same thing on the transgender movement. Nobody will actually argue the science of it from the Democrats. It's simply, and if you say, well, it's a mental health issue, they'll get on your case, as they are the first ones to promote, well, you need to agree with these people, otherwise they'll commit suicide, and that life is on you.
Right.
which of course is not true, but it sounds as if you're compassionate.
Right.
I'm compassionate for I can still be compassionate, but I'm not going to lie about the truth in order to be compassionate. I want people to get all the mental health services they need, for that, and I hope they search for it. But the fact is, the attempted and the suicide rate of transgenders is above the average person, as we all know. And how do we know it? The Democrats promote it on a consistent basis.
Right.
And so they were, as they're saying, they go, Mr. Trump, don't you understand? This gets to the heart of science. This gets to the heart of women's rights. How are you ignoring this? It was really interesting to watch that because I will say this. I've never seen on social media, especially Trump friendlies, come out against him on an issue as hard as they did yesterday on at least the first 50 that I read. Now, it might be anecdotal evidence right where I read it, but these were Trump supporters saying, we support you, but you're absolutely wrong on this. How can you not understand, the seriousness of that, especially with everything that you've been through?
Well, and what's notable about the anecdotal evidence is that you have to understand that if you post something if you in the comments category disagree with Donald Trump, then typically everyone's coming at you. I mean, you're making yourself a target, and those individuals understood that. That tells you how strong, at least the individuals that you saw and their response, how strong that belief is in them. Because they know that. They know.
Yeah, that's true.
Because if you come out and you, again, this is his post, and you're responding in the comments to his post directly, or you're going to, on most issues, you're going to get bombarded. And they know that, but yet, not just one, but you saw a few dozen people, several dozen people that were willing to say, no, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I'll put this in the first, because I went down 50.
Yeah.
There wasn't one that agreed with him.
Wow.
Now, there were the trolls, but I went down to the first 50 that I could see were Trump friendlies. I didn't go to the ones that automatically, would go after him for that. But that wasn't even a lot. There were only a few of those, and they weren't even making sense because Trump was actually taking their side, which made it tough for them to criticize
interesting
Trump.
Point. Yeah, exactly. Right.
But I thought it was interesting. 866-90-RED-I.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-I on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. We can't forget about the whole immunity case that the three-judge panel made, which was completely wrong. Now, interestingly enough, when this first came up, and Trump said you get total immunity for everything, we said, well, no, that's not true.
That's not true.
That wasn't true.
You went too far with the argument.
Right. But then the court went way too far, saying, because we'll get into the possibilities if this were to stick, saying that presidents can be prosecuted for their official actions.
Oh, we've got a long list of examples of how this could go very badly.
And they say, for example, Trump telling Pence, well, when you go in there, I want you to do this. They're viewing that as a crime, and it goes, sounds like an official action of a president to a vice president right there.
Right.
So that's an official, whether you agree with it or not.
Right.
But it's unconstitutional. Well, then Biden goes to jail for his executive orders. Every executive order that is deemed unconstitutional, you go to jail for because you've actually broken the law.
Yep.
And one of the immunities you have, all presidents have, for example, if you sit there and, you shoot some missiles and you kill, let's put it this, when you look at Afghanistan, remember we've got the terrorists. They ended up killing all civilians
Right.
in
Yeah.
Afghanistan.
Yeah. Right.
Well, if you were that negligent before you killed somebody, if this was just the criminal justice system, you'd be charged with something.
Right. Yep.
Whether it was negligent homicide or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But no, you have immunity for those official actions, and so really, in a way, it's humorous, and it will be overturned by the Supreme Court.
I don't have any doubt.
Because reverse it, Democrats, reverse
Yep.
it. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't really hear this. Didn't get as much conservative media covered it. I didn't really see the liberal media cover it and say, no, you can be charged for your official acts.
Right.
Because then
Yeah.
you simply say, okay, what if a Democrat did this or this or this? Well,
Yeah.
no. Only Trump gets prosecuted.
Right.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for being here this morning. Yeah, so on the immunity ruling from the D.C. Circuit Court, the fact that, and we had addressed this early on when Trump said he can't be criminally indicted because he was already impeached by the House and acquitted by the Senate, trying to make it that's double jeopardy. It's not. That was a ridiculous argument for his lawyers or him to make. That wasn't going to happen. And so you said, okay, he's going to lose on that. But then, of course, the liberals are always hold my beer.
Yep.
And so they come out and say that, Trump can be. As the Wall Street Journal writes here, yet the court also makes too short work of better arguments. In Nixon versus Fitzgerald, 1982, the Supreme Court said the president has absolute immunity from civil liability for official acts. One question posed by Mr. Trump's case is whether his actions in the run-up to January 6th were within the outer perimeter of his official duties, as Fitzgerald puts it. Mr. Trump, if the president asks a vice president to perform a legislative maneuver in the Senate, that looks like official conduct.
Yeah.
What about the other allegations in the indictment, though, such as Mr. Trump and his aides convened sham proceedings to cast phony electoral votes? Well, the D.C. court blows right past that question because it categorically refuses to extend the logic of Fitzgerald. We cannot accept that the office of the presidency places its former occupants above the law for all time thereafter, the panel says. The judges are justifiably outraged at his conduct after the 2020 election, which they call unprecedented assault on the structure of our government. But if the president could be hobbled by civil suits over official actions, where is a concern that he might be paralyzed by the thought of partisan indictments the moment he leaves office? The panel says the criminal process has safeguards in grand juries and ethical obligations of prosecutors. Grand juries? Really? For the first time since the founding, this is the first time since the founding that a former president has been federally indicted, the judges write. With confidence, that might not age well. The risk that former presidents will be unduly harassed by meritless federal criminal prosecutions appears slight. Well, Mr. Trump is all but promising that if he wins in November, he will ask his Justice Department to charge President Biden. Quote, Joe would be ripe for indictment, end of quote, he said last month. For what crime? Who knows? But the federal statute books are huge. The Supreme Court last year upheld a law that gives prison time to a person who, quote, encourages or induces an alien to come to, enter, or reside in the United States.
Oh, how many counts do we have here?
The Supreme Court last year upheld a law that gives prison time to a person who, quote, encourages or induces an alien to come to, enter, or reside in the United States, end of quote. Mr. Trump's claims of total immunity for anything a president does are obviously wrong, but the D.C. court has gone overboard in the other direction by declaring a president has no immunity. By the D.C. Circuit's logic, a former president could be charged with a crime for violating any constitutional statute. Harry Truman might have been prosecuted for seizing steel mills. He was blocked by the Supreme Court. Well, as we said, every executive order that Biden has put out that's been found unconstitutional, the eviction mandate, let's talk COVID, the vaccine mandate, all of these things that the Supreme Court were says unconstitutional means that the president broke the law.
Yep.
And you say it's civil law. No, according here, it's not civil law, it's criminal law.
You know, there are pick your president. Pick your actions of war, even without a declaration. Pick your directives from the heads of the Department of Justice. You know, like, I know this is crazy. Y'all bear with me. Go write down the license plate numbers of parents who are at school board meetings. I know.
Yeah.
It's not ever going to happen because that would be stupid. Look at all the things. Now, by the way, those are horrific injustices in terms of, you know, what we've seen with the top brass at the Department of Justice, the FBI, and so on in recent years. But the point is that if you're going to open this up, of course, that would be the Department of Justice, different than a sitting president. But wait a minute. That sitting president was talking to the AG, you know, and was there a directive between the two, even unofficially, blah, 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 blah. The fact of the matter is that they got it wrong. The court got it wrong. The Supreme Court will likely overturn this. But imagine if it were to stand. Look, I question why people would run for president and want the job. But, man, if that were the case. We talked about serving in the administration and how you don't have enough money for lawyers. Because if they call you to testify, you've got to show up and you've got to pay for the lawyers. And it will break you. Ask Michael Flynn. And so imagine that you were going to, I'm going to run for president. Well, here are all the things that you could go to jail for.
Well, you and I talked about even before, you know, this, for example, this kind of ruling, how I would never, ever work in the White House.
Nope.
Ever.
Nope. Not one day.
Because how many, was it Michael Caputo that said, because he was called before Congress, never charged with anything. I think he went like 3 or 4 times.
Right.
He said, what you have to understand is when you're called to be before Congress, that's automatically $50,000. He goes, I don't make. And you look at this,
exactly
a
what I was referring
a lot of
to,
people
yeah.
may work in government.
Yeah.
You know, even if you work in the White House, you may be making $150,000.
Right. Right.
But you have to go and testify 3 or 4 times. You know, all of a sudden you're talking about $250,000 in lawyers' fees. Well, you've got to come up with your own defense fund to do it. You're standing on your own. I would never in my life, ever, put myself in such a situation where I can't, because you can't cover yourself with that with insurance.
No.
It's like you can't get an
No.
umbrella.
Right.
No insurance company is going to write you. You go to work in the White House. What do you do? I work in the White House. You don't get umbrella insurance
Right.
for this kind of stuff. They won't give it to you. I would never make myself that vulnerable to forces that I cannot control that can destroy my wealth.
Right. And destroy your life.
And destroy your life too. Yeah, exactly.
You know,
And so if you took it even further, where the president had no immunity for official tasks, that means you don't have any if you worked in the White House.
Right.
Which means more times you're going to be called before Congress. More times you're going to have a lawyer on retainer.
Right.
And it's like one of the things that, they has been talked about. Who will Trump find to be his lawyers or work in the White House? When almost every one of them have had come out of it with huge legal fees.
Oh, man. And it's not over. It's not even close to over.
No.
So, I look at this whole situation and what you have when you step back in this court decision, what you have is this liberal mindset. And we've been saying for a long, long time. The similar mindset is in many ways much more dangerous than a conspiracy that requires all these actors to work together and coordinate, because if they all have the same mindset, they all have the same mission, then they don't have to communicate to each other. It's just going to happen. And this is what's going on here right now in the current environment. We're going to stop Trump and use our power. We're going to take him off the ballot in our state. We're going to go after him for no actual complaints, no one actually suing him in the state of New York. But we're going to say that, he can't do business, and we're going to take all of his businesses away from him in New York and his ability to do any further business in New York. And this is the same mindset, the same kind of approach, and that is, oh, no, we can go after Trump for official actions as president.
Well, and remember, though, Trump is using so much of the campaign donations for his legal fees.
Oh, yeah.
Average people that work in the White House can't do it.
Right.
And the threat is
Great point.
you become a Republican, you are part of government, and we'll destroy you financially, because the message is being sent. We're attempting to destroy Donald Trump financially. You're next.
Right. Yeah.
We'll call you before Congress. We'll do anything we possibly can to run up those legal fees that you'll have to file bankruptcy. Yep. So don't you dare. Look, we've seen it across the board with Democrats and their intimidation techniques. Let's look at, let's look at Riley Gaines. Let's look at all those swimmers.
Yeah.
They didn't. Their lives were being threatened. We'll destroy you. We'll destroy your career. We'll destroy your future. You won't be able to get a job anywhere. As Riley Gaines and all the other swimmers said, we were threatened like you can't believe.
Right.
And so don't expect that it doesn't move up into higher levels.
Right.
And the ability to destroy somebody financially,
in fact,
is the ability to destroy that person.
Yeah, in fact, with their agenda, the greater the threat, the greater the attack. They'll go after Trump, but they're not going to, they're not going to limit it to people with that kind of power. They'll limit it to the collective, threat. Parents at school board meetings. You're starting something politically that's going to hurt us. We're going to be taking your license plate numbers down. You and I talked about it. We said, all right, when the school session comes back, because we were talking about Loudon and everything that was kind of starting to boil there, and it was a very serious situation. And parents with a very, very good and justifiable reason to be there and be outraged at that school board. And we said, look, this isn't over. When school session comes back, there will be more activity. And we were right, of course, and that's just, as a parent, you know that. And it's going to rise to the top again. And then, now we have learned since then, FBI had agents sitting in the parking lot, school board meetings, because this movement collectively was a threat to their agenda. And people at the top were using their power to give those directives, which is unconstitutional.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if we want to open this can of worms, then let's go.
Let's go. Yeah, that's the. But again, the tunnel vision of Trump.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the Trump derangement syndrome is
Yeah.
so great. Even
Right,
in
they don't even see out. You're right. That's a good
even
point.
in the courts, they don't even see.
They don't see outside of that.
Would you understand how somebody like Biden would be vulnerable?
Yeah.
Under what you have said, how
Okay.
Obama would have been vulnerable.
Okay, Jay Leno stopped being political, and he talked about it in an interview. Because I quit doing it. I quit doing the. I'm not doing the political. People just have their. It's kind of a. But he was saying in the interview. I don't do. Some people. I don't do the jokes in it. It's not really funny. Yeah, you want to go in the car? So he was what.
Go ahead.
But he was, and I love Jay. I really do. But he was saying, I don't do the political jokes right now because, it's just like, you're not going to win it. He goes, and so I think the interview at some point asked him about his political views. Because on the Tonight Show, it seemed like at times he was more conservative. Because, he would go after liberals and, well, no, you make fun of whatever president. He was making the point in the interview. And he said, I'm not really fond of Trump, but I'm against this whole taking him off the ballot thing, because if they can do that to their side, then somebody can do that to the other side. Your point of this court, not with the tunnel vision and Trump derangement syndrome, Jay Leno may be a liberal or just may not like Trump, but he understands, as most critical thinkers and most people who think at all, that this can apply across the board.
But I can deal with an old school liberal.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go in the car, we can go take a ride.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying he is, but if that
right, exactly.
But if he's an old school liberal,
right,
who believes in the Bill of Rights,
there you go.
Exactly, and due process, and things like an old liberal, I may not agree with them on everything, but I'm telling you, I will have a lot more in common of the beliefs with an old school liberal than I will what has appeared today, which is just pure insanity from the left.
Because he can have a conversation with you. You can't have a conversation with the insane left.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Smart owner-operators make every single week as profitable as possible. One trip is not enough time to be considered profitable or unprofitable, and an entire month may be too much time to manage. 1 week is the right amount of time to deal with efficiently. To do so, look at the advantages and disadvantages of every day of the week. Match trip length to the optimum day of the week. Plan to deliver on the day you have the best opportunity of getting a load. Your personal weekly plan will vary depending on the weekly delivery flow cycle of your region, typical length of haul, personal requirements, and other factors. What's important is to have a specific weekly plan that helps you be successful. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's our Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. Oh, yeah, I forgot. And when you said a little bit before you said eligibility, I'm like, oh, yeah, we had the immunity, then the eligibility one going before the Supreme Court here today. And the eligibility should be in a sane world 9-0.
Yeah.
Trump is eligible to run for president.
Right. But again, it's part of that overall mentality of we'll just say it's true.
Right, we'll say it's true.
We'll just make the judgment, and boom, he's off the ballot. No due process. Well, boom, gavel, done.
And we'll get into some of the specifics of what they'll probably look at legally, but there is no case for Colorado to do it.
No,
and I like what you said about Jay Leno, because we said the same thing. Well, it doesn't matter what you think of Trump. You set up this law. How vulnerable are Democrats?
It would just open the can of worms, and
it's like
it
impeachment.
would be never ending.
They would have never attempted to impeach Mayorkas 5 years ago.
Right. No, that's a great point.
The Republicans would have done it, but Democrats changed.
That's a good point.
Changed it where impeachment is now just a censure.
And
doesn't mean anything.
Liberals used to think, well, they won't come back at us because they're Republicans. All that is off.
Yep.
More listeners not now than now, depending on when now is. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. I want to play this. I'm not sure whether this was yesterday or the day before.
Okay.
I just don't know. I have the timestamp on this, but this is Pete Ducey with Karine Jean-Pierre.
Okay.
All
right.
And this is just great because, he says the border wouldn't be a big deal if Congress would have just passed immigration bill on day one. And he makes the case, who was in charge of Congress on day one?
Yeah.
It's all Democrats.
Right.
And watch how she attempts to stall here. This is the best part where she just, because
scrambling.
She's, basically says it's 3 years, 3 whole years. It's more than 3 years, more than 1,000 days. And it's like, oh my God, she doesn't have an answer.
Trying to stretch the one answer out.
Yeah, so here it is. This is why I say anybody on the right, any Republicans who say the Republicans can't win this argument now because of this failed Senate legislation is completely wrong. You can win it.
Yep.
You can be effective and win it. Now, can the Republicans blow it? Yeah. Should they have been more aware that they didn't have the votes for impeachment? Probably. But I still don't believe that is, you had the one, can't think of the name of the congressman who voted against the impeachment so that it stays, that they can bring it up for a vote again, and they may bring it up for a vote. But all you have to simply say is that's how bad it is in Congress.
Right.
We're trying, we are trying to do everything that we can across the board, but liberalism has even seeped into some Republicans. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, you can still, as long as you keep Mayorkas in there, when Mayorkas is in there, you can use it against him. Well, he's going to be in there because you weren't going to get rid of him to begin with.
Right.
And so it's a symbolic. Impeachment's like a censure. But the fact is, they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And you and I were like, well, you don't need to do it because Mayorkas isn't the problem. Biden's the problem.
Yep.
Mayorkas can't do anything unless Biden approves it. You're not willing to impeach Biden for it. So,
it was like when we were talking about Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy. I mean, the other conversation about Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy, you're not changing the makeup of the GOP in the House if McCarthy's gone. So, in fact, as you pointed out, actually, it's one less.
Yeah.
And then it starts to crumble from within. You're not changing the administration by getting rid of Mayorkas.
And so, but they can still talk about what Mayorkas has done and said, and they win then.
Right.
And so if you believe people are paying attention to the politics of it versus the reality of what's going on, I think the public knows who's responsible. Mm-hmm. And trying to sell the fact that it's been day one, the Republicans' fault is where Ducey was able to get her, and she couldn't answer the question. Here we go.
So you guys talk a lot, including today, about how the border wouldn't be such a big deal if Congress would have just passed your immigration bill on day one. Who was in charge of Congress on day one?
So it's been 3 years. It's been three whole years. More than 3 years. More than 1,000 days.
And while it's not as long as 4 years, it's more than 2 years. In fact, as I point out, more than 3. Let's break that down.
and let's hear the rest. I had to stop it after that one because that's her stall. The stall is just to keep repeating something,
Flipping through the book.
But what I love was he didn't mention the 3 years. He said if Congress would have passed the bill on day one. Well, it's been 3 years. It's been 3.
Yeah.
3 whole years. Well, that's 3 times she said it. Oh, more than 3 years. 4 times. And then it's like, okay, I got to move off to 3 years. More than 1,000 days. That wasn't the question, but let's continue it here. Okay.
And look, this is a difficult issue, obviously. This is a difficult issue. And what we have said is that Congress has to act, right? Congress, Democrats, Republicans have to act. But
it doesn't go anywhere, so I don't have to go any further on it.
Oh,
But it's just like
oh my gosh. You know what you just heard? Eric Harley's sophomore book report. It's a book. It's a book with pages. It's a book that was written by a person.
No, it's you had to do at least 1,000 words, and you only had 500.
Exactly. Well, no, this is the oral book report. I hated oral book reports. Like, yeah, I came down with laryngitis. It's a book written by a person. It's about things and stuff. And look, it's not easy to write a book. I think we should take a moment and appreciate all the authors out there. How about a round of applause for all the authors in the...
I can still remember on a 2.5 Men when the kid Jake did his book report.
Yeah.
And he goes, and it was supposed to be about my weekend. He goes, this is a book report, my weekend with Jake, I forgot, what, Harper. With Jake Harper. My name is Jake Harper. I live at, he's given his address, and this is and she goes, there wasn't a minimum word requirement. Oh, okay.
No, on the written ones, I would really make stuff up. I would on the minimum wordage thing. We'd go to town on this. This was another horrible attempt. She's horrible because, quite frankly,
she's horrible.
Because, listen, we've as I've mentioned before, she's horrible. It's a very difficult situation to assess every night on a talk program. It's been more than 3 years that she's been horrible, and more than 1,000. That's more than 1,000 days that she's been horrible. She was going through that book so fast that the breeze from the pages was blowing her hair back.
What I was thinking about this yesterday. What's incredible, I mean, Biden is just getting worse and worse every single day.
Yeah,
and
she seems to be emanating him.
Well, that's the thing. There isn't anybody. It's so tough to defend him, but was a horrible choice from day one to begin with. We thought Kirby would be a better choice if he replaced her, but he's not as bad as her, but he's having trouble defending the things that the president does.
Right.
That's the problem with Kirby.
Right.
But what I find interesting is she still has that lead position, and so they know that Biden cannot communicate effectively, yet still Karine Jean-Pierre stays there. She cannot communicate effectively. Everybody in the White House press corps, probably you should call her, gaslight Karine.
Yeah.
Because that's what she does so much of the time.
Karine Jean Hot Air.
Yeah. And it's just, I mean, you could not have picked a worse person to represent any president, but to represent a president who cannot communicate effectively. She's even worse.
When Sarah Huckabee Sanders was in that job, there were days, maybe more than a few, where Trump, on his messaging, because he would talk to the media as we said a few times, almost to a fault. He would stop almost every time getting on Marine One and then just hold an impromptu press conference. Say what you will, but he wasn't afraid of the media. But sometimes, so he's out there and all of a sudden he's kind of talking in circles, kind of like I do when my wife asks, where are all the M&Ms? And you would have Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She would be, in her job, boom, 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 boom. Now, at one point, it became a little more difficult because the messages were conflicting, and so they stopped holding the daily press conference for a while. But that doesn't degrade her ability to do that job. She was very good at the job in handling the media and expressing what was going on. The problem is sometimes, again, the positions were changing and evolving, and that's what made it difficult for her. With Karine Jean-Pierre, she's just horrible at her job. And she's horrible at her job for a horrible president who is not capable of communicating himself effectively. So these are the things that, when you see an entire team on the field performing badly, that's often an indication of a horrible coach. If it's one player or a couple of players, well, that's usually those players. They're performing. Each of them are performing at the Biden level, and the Biden level has a number of different meanings. Lying. Mayorkas is performing at the Biden level when it comes to lying. Not being able to explain or answer for things. His spokesperson, Karine Jean-Pierre, as you just heard, is performing at the Biden level because he also talks in circles and mumbles and doesn't have the answers. So they all perform at the Biden level. They're all up to par with Joe Biden, which is horrible. The bar hasn't been lowered. The bar is on the ground.
Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad right now, and Biden is getting worse and worse each and every day. I got to find the audio cut where he talked about he can't answer any questions yesterday, but he's going to answer them today.
Yeah.
And it's like there is no press conference on his schedule.
Right.
And I just checked his schedule now, and there isn't still anything on there. They could always change, but it's like he's promising to answer reporters' questions, but not today. And it's like, I'll answer them tomorrow. And it's like the RNC picked up on that immediately and said, there's nothing on the schedule.
Right.
There's no press conference on the schedule for the president at all.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, I'm just going to lie to you and say I can't answer your questions now.
Right.
If anybody starts to keep it down, everybody starts yelling at you.
Right.
It's like, look, I'll answer them tomorrow, and then you just don't answer them tomorrow.
Right.
It's bizarre right now.
And the answer
really,
from
really
Karine
is.
Jean-Pierre, well, we know that, but the president, has been president for 3 years, more than 3 years. It's been more than 1,000 days.
Yeah.
And it's hard. This is a difficult job. It's, because things are, hard.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I just love this headline here. Senate Republicans block bipartisan border security deal. I'm going to do the headline a different way.
Okay.
The border security deal is rejected by a bipartisan Senate.
Thank you for fixing it. Because that's what happened.
Yes.
You had, how many did you say, 4 Democrats?
You have 4 Democrats and then Bernie, who's considered an independent.
Right. Because we don't have an official Communist Party representative.
So five liberals. Elizabeth Warren voted against it.
Yeah, right.
And so that's how it should read. The border security deal is rejected by a bipartisan group of senators.
There you have it.
I love how we use, hey, I didn't start it. I didn't start. If you get one vote on the other side, it becomes bipartisan.
Right.
So, hey, 5 votes, and it definitely is bipartisan because it was 4 votes the other way with Republicans.
Right.
So it was more liberals than it was Republicans.
Right. But all
Let's
the
play
headlines were the GOP has.
Let's
One?
play this stupid game. We'll play it all day.
Sure. Why not? Let's go.
We got time.
Right.
We got nothing to do.
Stop the presses. Let us fix it.
We'll fix it
We'll
right.
fix your headlines.
Bipartisan group of senators reject the weakening of the border security deal.
Or for the populist, here's the populist version of the headline. Senators from both parties come together to stop the border bill.
Like
that?
I like that, yes.
Work together. They reach across the aisle to stop we can do this all day. Liberal media is a joke.
A bipartisan group of senators worked less than 3 years, less than 1,000 days,
Listen,
to reject this weak border security deal.
It was, we're pretty sure, more than an hour and possibly more than 2 hours. We're working to confirm that could have been as many as or more than 3 hours. Sit there and do the stall all day. Can you imagine that's your job?
The Karine stall.
The Karine stall. Listen, this is a difficult issue. I'm sorry. Could you tell me about the easy issues out there?
Yeah.
Where are the easy issues? Inflation. That's an easy one. The border. No, that's a hard issue. They're all hard.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara.
Hello.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. Just briefly want to chat about the whole Tucker Carlson thing, interviewing Putin.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's committed treason and all that. Well, not really. I mean, reporters have done that on a consistent basis. Yeah. It was lined out yesterday, the number of people that have interviewed him or have interviewed people that we've been at war at.
Peter Arnett, actually, the former CNN reporter in the cave with Osama bin Laden. And in the interview, Osama bin Laden is declaring war with the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's their
Saddam Hussein.
media.
Dan Rather interviewed Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
So, all that. That's not, look, the problem with Tucker Carlson that I have has got nothing to do with that. It's him losing credibility as he's been losing based on two things. Mm-hmm. Number one, he's never denied it, all the documents of the emails that he sent to different people at Fox News saying how much he hated Trump and how much Trump was throwing around BS about the stolen election.
Right.
But he was saying something different on the air.
Right.
Saying something, and I say that hurts his credibility because I've never done that.
Nope.
I've never taken one opinion privately and a separate opinion publicly. That destroys his credibility. I saw a lot of people calling him a journalist. He's more of an opinion maker than a journalist, but I guess we're all under the same rules of a journalist if you're reporting
We're
on
in
something.
the media, and we're relaying facts, whether we are going out and doing the reporting on it or doing the interview or assessing the interview and the story or the news.
And that, to be honest, that always shocked me how Trump supporters weren't furious at him and they just, whatever, no big deal.
Right.
And I was reading Jim Garrity's column that he had, I think it was in December, about Tucker Carlson basically saying, what in the world, what's on Tucker Carlson's mind, these days. And he does go into the whole Trump thing. He says, yes, I recall that back in early January 2021, Carlson once texted, "I hate him passionately," referring to Trump. That apparently is water under the bridge. But the other thing is the thing he said last month, which is just pure nuts. He's nuts on this. Somebody, you would need to actually look at Tucker Carlson and say, are you okay? And that was his whole discussion on UFOs, where he said, it's my personal belief based upon a fair amount of evidence. They're not aliens that we're encountering. They've always been here, and I do think it's spiritual. That's my view. And again, it's not provable, but based on the evidence. Well, that doesn't make any sense.
What? It's not provable, but it's based on the evidence?
Yeah. If the government has, in fact, had direct contact with these beings, whatever they are, and I told you what I think they are, and has entered into some sort of agreement with them, which is a claim of informed people, it's a very, very heavy thing. And so he's talking about basically demonic forces is what we're dealing with here. When you get into it, and and then he starts talking about how evil the world is, and Garrity says, "But this is from December, not last month, almost 2 months ago. I think if you're going to publicly make the argument, and this is the argument that Tucker Carlson was attempting to make, that the United States government has entered into an agreement with evil demons, you really ought to bring some serious evidence to the table." Is that too much to ask? The bigger and more consequential the accusation, the more important it is to have proof and verification. So that's my problem with Tucker Carlson. He's losing credibility big time by taking delusional opinion on things like the UFOs without being able to say, here is my evidence.
Well, it's bizarre.
It's bizarre. I know it is. Completely bizarre.
We can have the conversation. Hey, do you believe in extraterrestrial life?
But I have to say this now. He says, because Garrity wrote this, but I can hear it. But Jim, look at the evidence. In fact, I'm sure there's someone out there right now who's insisting that the fact that I'm skeptical that the U.S. government is secretly in an alliance with dark spiritual forces is a sign that I, too, am in alliance with the dark spiritual forces.
He's doubling down in order to defend his own position.
But if an American
that's a horrible defense.
But if an American media reporter wants to play Putin, that's fine.
I'm okay with that.
I've got no problem with it. Yeah.
Look, everyone. Listen, if Steven Seagal wants to be the top general for the Russian forces.
God, I remember that.
Because tell me if you're in the media. I'm sorry, other people. We're going to talk to just our media friends right now. No, let me rephrase that. If you were in the media, if you're trying to gain notoriety, and Tucker doesn't need to gain notoriety, but you kind of work to do things that are notable. You sit down interview with Vladimir Putin? Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's like saying, because if someone said to me, would you do a sit-down interview with Joe Biden? I wouldn't be able to say yes loud enough. That doesn't mean I endorse Joe Biden.
Him. Right. So I just want to make that clear with us. That's not Tucker's problem. The problem is he's losing credibility by the two examples that we just gave you right there.
Now, I will say this. It was different when Dan Rather, when he sat down with Saddam Hussein, because Dan Rather was endorsing Saddam Hussein at the time for re-election as a leader of Iraq. So that was different. It was on the campaign trail. It was the kind of thing you do, kind of like Hannity and Trump. But it's, so it's different thing. It's a joke. And so Dan Rather's lawyers.
Well, look, if he made up stuff about Bush, you can make up stuff about him.
I can make things up about him. It's a joke, but maybe not. But there's the thing that, you look at it, it's people tend to go, it's like watching a school of bait fish. One goes one direction. It's all one direction. All right. We can, like you just did, separate and go, hey, look, there's some bizarre things, a couple of bizarre things and questions that we have, a number of questions. I'd like to do a sit-down interview with Tucker Carlson. But the criticism of him sitting down and doing an interview with Putin, that's not warranted. I would do that all day. I'd love to do that.
Well, I mean, this goes back to an article written about Tucker Carlson in National Review back to last year, April of last year, by Michael Brendan Doherty. The narrative out there is that Tucker Carlson, recently canned by Fox News, has been badly exposed by the disclosures from lawsuits. He says one thing in public. He says one thing in private, that he hates Trump passionately, and he's never said anything like that on air. Charles Krauthammer used to say, "You're betraying your whole life if you don't say what you think, and you don't say it honestly and bluntly."
Yeah.
And, so, again, that was just stuff where you just shake your head going, you can't get caught. You and I talked about that before. You can't get caught doing it. Now, he said, I was just angry.
You and I have been angry.
I've been angry all the time. I don't change what I believe.
Right. Well, no. In fact, to the point.
I don't say.
If I got to that point, I would, and I'm going on the air. First of all, I'm not going to hide that from my viewers on TV if I were on TV, or in our case, the two listeners we have on the radio. I'm not going to hide that from the audience. I'm going to bring that to them. It's what we do. Now, if you're afraid of the backlash, you're in the wrong business. You and I felt it in 2016 and in 2020, and we both voted for Trump. And if he's the nominee this time, I'll vote for him again. But don't think for a moment if I have a problem with him, I'm going to just be off the air with it and then just do nothing but praise and hurrah and sis boom ba. That's not going to be the case, because if we're going to do this, the great thing, this is what I love about talk radio. It has been a tradition for decades now of a very open, blunt, and honest conversation if you're doing it right.
But if you're truly a journalist, you don't come out and say what you believe is the United States government is secretly negotiating with demonic forces and then state all this evil's in the world and good people, I believe it because good people have told me. Sorry, when you make the bigger the accusation, the more you need evidence to back it up. And so when something like that happens with Tucker Carlson, he lost complete and total credibility with me. Anything that he says from this point on, from that point on after, I've got to fact check. I've got to question everything.
Look, the night, again, we mentioned it recently, but it's useful here. The night Brett Baier, just hours after he came on and said that his sources tell him that an indictment was pending on Hillary Clinton on the email thing. We both came on that night, first thing on our show, just hours after he said it, because we have a lot of respect for Brett Baier. Your sources better be right, and you better be right in trusting those sources and going on the air with.
And we said that night.
He got burned.
He better be right, because if not,
it takes your credibility. Nobody knows who your sources are.
Right.
It's you. You're the face.
Right.
It's your word. One of the I just told my wife and I were and my son and I were having a conversation about when I was young, when I was an adolescent and the whole thing. And one of the gut punches of my life is when my mom said to me, I got in trouble at school. She said to me on the way home, "Your word is no good."
I know.
And the way she left it there, no lecture after that. She was talking to me, and she ended it with that. Your word is no good. And I'm telling you, I still feel that gut punch today. And that's the thing. There's no reason to lie or pull punches in what we do. There's no reason to. And if you're going to do something and you're going to have, however you're going to present it, you and I have had this process and our mission statement really from the beginning, even probably before we worked together, I'm sure of it. John McNamara, if you're going to say it, you better know, before you say it, be right.
Yeah,
sure footing.
Right. As my dad said, that the secret in business and everything, but especially in business, is you better be right 100% of the time. And I looked at him and said, well, you can't be. We're imperfect. He said, if you're not sure 100% and you're at work and you're not sure, shut up.
Yep. If you're on Everest and you're not sure of that next step,
he goes,
don't take it.
He goes, that's how you can be right 100% of the time.
Otherwise, you lose the credibility. In the media, you lose the credibility, and it doesn't matter your sources. That's why we're very careful. If there's breaking news, we'll tell you where we're getting it from. You're very careful when you present stories that we bring from either National Review, Axios. Here's why it matters. And wherever it's from, because it is about that perspective. Here's who it is that's writing this, or editorial board at the Wall Street Journal, and all of these things that we bring. Very clear about where we're getting it from, and it's important because we're not the reporters. We're breaking it down, but when we break it down, we're the face of it, and our assessment of that is what we own.
We're not gathering the news and presenting it to you. We're looking at the news and commenting on it.
Yes.
And so we always tell you, because we don't want to say, well, this story we created.
Right. That's why.
So if a story is wrong, we can only we don't have an investigative staff.
Right.
So we wouldn't have time to do it. That's not our role. Our role is to comment on the news. And if there's anything in a story that is wrong, we don't hide it. We'll bring it up the first thing on the show, or we'll bring it up a lot of times we'll go back and say, when did we say this yesterday?
Right.
At what time did we say it? Okay, we need to correct it at roughly that same time, believing that hopefully most of the audience that was there at that time,
based on their habits,
right,
listening habits,
right. You hear the correction. We're not trying to bury it,
right?
Because we didn't get it wrong. Somebody else got it wrong,
right?
So we're not trying to bury it,
right?
And that doesn't happen very often for us. But when it does, we're like, last thing we want to do is be defending or even debating something that isn't true. Why? Because it's a waste of our time.
And we're very often, we will state, if it's accurate and true. If it's accurate and true, the story.
We've stated that,
if the story is accurate and true, then it means this, and here's our assessment. That's part of it. But we don't pull punches and scream and then do something else on the air. And we also don't make up stories about aliens being demons.
Now, Eric is possessed. Now, I have no evidence to prove it, but it's just this feeling I get where my hair is standing at its ends right now, being in the same studio, and I've just got a cold draft down on me.
That's the air conditioner.
Oh, that is the air conditioner right
kicked
above
on
me.
right as you were saying that.
Right
I did listen to a lot of Ozzy Osbourne as a kid, though. True story. I seriously recently was passing by a church, and I was playing Black Sabbath in my truck, and I turned it off while I was passing by the church. I'm not lying. That is not an exaggeration. I can't prove it. I was the only one in my truck. But I don't know why I did that.
Are you Iron Man?
Actually, yeah, I am. I am Iron Man.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Hurley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, we do need to announce that Marianne Williamson has dropped out of the Democrat race for president.
Yeah. Listen. Okay.
One thing I did want to say, because I got it wasn't yesterday, but it was the day. It was either the days of the week, because we missed yesterday is just completely screwing me up.
Yeah.
I think it was Monday, maybe it was Monday or Tuesday, where Nikki Haley came out basically in favor of the immigration bill.
Yeah.
And
right.
I'm sitting here thinking to myself,
Yeah.
what is she doing? Because she's hurting. Nikki Haley had a future, I believe, with the Republican Party before all of this.
I'm with you.
And she's staying to the point where she is taking positions that the majority of the Republican Party are completely against.
Yeah.
And that's the thing where, because she's not going to win. And it's like, okay, what are you trying to do? If you're not trying to win, you're trying to build yourself up in the Republican Party for the future, right?
Yep.
She's not doing that with the Republican Party.
No. It's almost,
And
so I don't know what she's doing.
And I go back to what we talked about last week. Is she making a run for the No Labels Party?
Oh, okay. Well, now adding, her position on the whole border bill thing, now it sounds like more and more she is. So here's my question. Did she think, okay, at one point, like we did early on, before really the beginning of the primary season, that, down the road, maybe there's something for her, she's not, it's not going to happen now. And now she sees it and says, oh, it's not going to happen in the GOP. And she's going, well, my best bet is the No Labels Party. Wow. Maybe. I don't know.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. I love how the media was all over. Taylor Swift sells her plane. The impression was she was selling her plane so there would be less criticism of her and climate change, yet I saw no evidence that she said that's why she's selling the plane.
Right.
It's like
what she's not going to go on tour in a hot air balloon, although that would probably are hot air balloons. Can you do that with the activist world today?
And from what I know, she's already paying the quote carbon credits, so there is no reason that she needs to do it. But it was like, as she's being criticized for flying the jet, she sells one of her, as if there's a relationship. And I'm like, okay, where's the evidence? That's why she did it. Oh, there isn't. She just sold the plane because she has a bigger plane that she actually uses because the tour is so big.
Gary, maybe she's going to, because you brought up the new wind-powered planes that have the little like
they got the
turbine,
windmill. They got the windmill blades,
turbines
the turbine blades on the front, and they
use that wind energy to power the plane.
Right, the wind blows.
Yeah.
It hits those windmill
turbine
blades.
Yeah.
They spin, and then the plane can fly by itself.
Right.
No energy is needed because it's a wind-powered plane.
Right. Yeah.
And we used to use them all the time. I mean, I used to, before jets came along, we had the solution of the wind-powered plane.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Seriously, I wonder how many people, if you just did that in a social media post, the new wind-powered plane, and put that on there, and how this plane runs, that you could, how many people could you sucker into you think, to believing that?
I'm telling you,
30%, 35,
I'm
40? Over half?
I think it's over. I think it's going to be over 1,000 days. Sorry, fell into
Oh, you mean over 3 years?
over 3 years. It
So you answer the question with an answer that has
Well,
nothing to do with the question.
well, tell me what I'm doing wrong because she does the same thing.
I know.
So, but because you're saying 40, and in my mind, I'm thinking, no, I actually think it would be more than 40, and this is why. And I joke about this, but man, I've got to float this idea: the solar-powered tanning bed. For us critical thinkers, it's a lawn chair.
I like that, though. I like that.
And, okay, you know what? I'm going to get banned from Facebook Marketplace. That's okay.
I didn't know you were on it.
Actually, I made my first purchase on it this past weekend.
Okay.
I bought something for my RV. It was brand new in the box and got a great deal on it. And I'd never done it. A great guy that sold it to me, great seller. But who cares if I'm banned from Facebook Marketplace, because I'm going to start selling on Facebook Marketplace solar-powered tanning beds. I'm just so curious. I mean, if I could mass market that, now some people would be, because it would be critical thinkers buying it for the joke.
Yes, like
And I
a
wouldn't-
like a pet rock.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And I wouldn't be able to, and then they would take it, to their relatives. And on the box, it's going to say
Right.
solar-powered tanning bed.
Yes.
And, it's going to be a
I
lawn
like the
chair
idea.
inside.
I like the idea.
Now, I could make $1 gazillion. I don't even know if gazillion's a real number, but if the liberals can make up things, I can do that. And so, but I would love to know.
Actually, I can see what you could actually, the model solar powered tanning bed that's like a model of it, which is just, a lounge chair, and there's some guy on it with a beard, or a beer, just holding a beer, and it's like that is, and then have on it solar powered tanning bed, and people could put it on their shelves, and people walk into their house.
Okay, so we go back to this from August. I think this is an update because I think it first appeared before August. In fact, I'm almost sure it did. But this article, this coverage of it, the new wind-powered cargo ship.
Yes. That's when we brought that up. The new technology of a wind-powered cargo ship.
The Pyxis Ocean, Pyxis, that's the name of the cargo ship, has set sail to test EU-funded. Of course it's EU-funded. You mean we didn't get in on this great opportunity here in the U.S.? Wind Wings technology, Wind Wings being the sails. It's Wind Wings technology. That's what they're calling the sails. This is the Eric Harley approach. Listen, I'm going to get a ton of EU money on this thing. We're gonna have a wind-powered ship. You mean a sailboat? Shut up. Don't say sailboat. Don't say sailboat. Don't say lawn chair, Eric. It's a solar-powered tanning bed.
You know what it reminds me of? Because, see, I have experience in this kind of technology.
Mm-hmm.
And this would go back to, I think it would have been a beginning of 1984. I think it was February of 84. Wow. 40 years ago, right? 40 years ago, right about now.
Oh, my gosh. I graduated high school 40 years ago this year.
And
That's weird.
And I had, because it would have been 84. We're at 2024. Wow.
Wow.
And I had the great opportunity, because the radio station I was working at in Fort Walton Beach, we sponsored a race. And I don't know if they're still there. People listening in Fort Walton Beach now would probably know, but it used to be the late Carlton Tucker. He was the son. His father, when I was there, owned the place called The Boat, and they sold the Hobie Cat, sailboats, little pontoons, catamarans, the little ones, whatever. And I forgot whether it was 16 or 18 foot, whatever, but like Carlton, his son, was world champion.
Yeah.
world champion at doing this.
Right.
And just the greatest guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking one day because we were doing the promotion for it,
Right. Yeah.
which means
Your station was.
yeah, they were buying ads for us to promote,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
their shop to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, the sales department worked out a promotion where we promoted this, you know, international race, you know, coming to Fort Walton Beach, and it was going to be on Choctawhatchee Bay.
Yeah.
And Carlton goes, and they're two men, you know, the captain and, you know, the crew,
Mm-hmm.
two-person. So Carlton came to me and goes, I got an idea. How about you and your co-host crewing? You could crew for me, and then your news guy could crew for the other person, and you'll actually be in a real race for like 3 days. So I don't have a clue what to do. So he said, well, we'll practice a couple of times, you know, during the week, and then it's like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I think it was something like that was the actual races.
Yeah.
And so I really, seriously, I wanted out after the first hour of training with him. I'll never forget.
It's a lot of work.
It's a hell of a
and
it's,
you better know what you're doing.
and I'll never forget being, I was up and the whole boat tipped over. The whole thing sort of tipped over. We caught because we're on the one pontoon and you're way
Yeah.
up there in the air.
Yeah.
And I go falling right through everything, the ropes and everything
gee.
else. I'm hitting metal. I'm flipping around,
Oh,
and
my
I go in the
gosh.
water, and I'm tangled in ropes, and I think I'm dead. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is it.
Right.
And I'm in a wetsuit because the water was still cold. It was probably in the 50s or whatever, and so
Right.
you're in a wetsuit.
Right.
I remember sticking my head above, you know, the water, you know, looking for, you know, are you okay, or some concern or sympathy. And there's Carlton, get the plank out of the water. Come on.
What are you doing, slacker?
Gets me up there. Well, the first day of the races, there was no wind.
Oh, well, that's a problem.
So you're laying flat on the boat. You can't even get it up on the one pontoon.
Mm-hmm.
We're just sitting there like this the entire day. Just so glad I have the wetsuit on, because I can't imagine how sunburned I would have been if I didn't have that wetsuit on.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were out there the entire day, probably never went over 3 miles an hour, and it was officially the race. You're slowly going.
Oh,
But then the next couple of days, we won a bunch of heats, and we came in second place, and we won the last 3 races. And he died like in 1999, a young age, like 38. And I didn't find out for a couple of years later, but such a great guy. But that's when I learned that wind power has its limitations.
Exactly.
And it has its limitations, and then at times it can kill you,
Right.
or almost kill you.
Yeah, wow.
But
remember
yeah,
the time that you were racing that NASCAR car and it flipped multiple times?
Yeah, at Texas Motor Speedway, the Legend
Wow.
car. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
You should stick to piloting with the Thunderbirds.
I did the Thunderbirds too, and they
Yeah,
let
I
me
was going
take
to say,
that.
because that went okay. That went great.
Thunderbirds went great. Never threw up. Took the 9 Gs
Mm-hmm.
and everything else. That was great. But I'll never. Yeah. The funny thing is when I flipped, and 4 or 5 times I flipped in the Legend car, and it's because I thought I was in a heat, and I thought I had a slower vehicle. I had a slower car,
Yeah.
and the only way I could catch the guy in the heat was to try to get around him in the corner, and my front left tire hit his back, and I just put me into a flip.
Oy.
He went spinning, I went flipping, and the only thing, I wasn't scared. There was nothing, because it's almost like it's surreal. But I remember you don't really feel the pounding and everything else of you know the cage hitting, and you're really tight in. I was as tight into that seat as I was when I went in the F-16.
Yeah.
With the Thunderbirds, you're really tight in there. I mean,
Yeah.
you're
especially after the accident that killed Dale Earnhardt. You know,
Yeah.
the technology, the safety technology in those cars, especially with the type of car you were in, which is not the full speed cars you mentioned.
It probably went about 110 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And we went around the small track at Texas Motor Speedway, not the large track, the one that they used to use for I don't even think if they still the races, the Thursday night races out there.
Yeah.
And so you're going in the pits. They take the one part of the speedway, and then it goes right into the pits, and you're going in a circle that way.
Yeah.
And but it feels like the cars are so low to the ground. If you're going 100 miles an hour, you feel like you're going 500. And that's how.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget when I'm like flipping in the air, and I remember my memory is I was upside down, and all I could think of, yeah, please don't have a piece of metal come through and decapitate me, because my mother's going to be so ticked off if that happens. That was actually the thought that went through my head.
Wow.
As I'm in the air flipping. But,
yeah. Wow.
I've done a lot of cool things. I will say that.
Yeah.
All because
Whether
of radio.
you did them right or wrong, that you did them.
Oh yeah. Whether I got too cocky at points, like I can get around this guy. No, you can't.
Well, I was going to say in those celebrity races, in that series of celebrity races,
I was racing Dan Potter.
Were you?
Yeah,
And he's the one that spun,
he spun. I flipped.
and you flipped.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't remember anyone else actually flipping a car multiple times. It may have happened and I didn't learn about it, but in that series of celebrity races, local celebrity races, I don't remember that happening except for you. That's a
I do
cool that you could walk away from it kind of story.
Well, what happened? Well, we sat there and we looked at each other, and he'd like put his hand up, like his thumbs up, and I put my thumbs up back, and he went, "You want to go?" And it's like, "Let's go." So we took off again. His car was fine. I didn't know until I got on the asphalt that I had a flat. So
On the one wheel you had left.
It's on the one, and so I just, but the crowd was going crazy.
Yeah.
They were just going.
Oh yeah,
Well,
especially when they learn that you're okay. It's like, that's
when I started, and then I just crawled across the finish line, and there's 30,000 people all going crazy, and I'm just like, this is really cool.
Yeah, our boss at the time was like, "Is Gary okay?" And I said, "Yeah, he's good." He's like, "Aw."
That was my last. I decided to hang up anything dangerous on that day.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I said it was like 2004, I think it was.
Yeah.
2004, I think that happened. And
Wow.
so it was like, okay, I'm done with this stuff. I don't need to take any. And I said, I did the Hobie Cat thing,
Right.
That international race and did well in it. And I went up in the F-16 and now I've flipped a race car.
Yeah.
Do I really need to do anything dangerous anymore, or is it time just to golf?
I hit 95 miles an hour in my truck recently, and I was testing something about the ability of my truck, and I'm too old to be doing things like that.
You are.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask any questions because I don't want you to get
We're
in
not
trouble
going
with law
to.
enforcement.
I'm not going to tell you where it was, and
Okay.
you can't prove it.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. Supreme Court to hear the Trump eligibility case today. We'll get to that, and also the politics of the border deal and how Republicans can still win it, even with the Mayorkas impeachment not going through, because he wasn't going to be removed from office anyway.
Right.
But you still have the same arguments still exist today, and you can argue against the border bill very easily. There's a reason that you had so many Republicans vote against it, a lot more than they thought originally that were going to vote against it.
Right.
There's a reason McConnell negotiated it, then went against it.
Right.
They realized that they couldn't defend it.
Right.
And we'll tell you why coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. We are Red Eye Radio. Thank you for being here.
Thank.
All right, just a couple of audio cuts here. Just got to throw in all the different audio cuts here from the last 48 hours. This is Pete Ducey asking this question to Karine Jean-Pierre.
How is President Biden ever going to convince the 3/4 of voters who are worried about his physical and mental health that he is okay, even though in Las Vegas he told a story about recently talking to a French president who died in 1996?
I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with you,
Why-
sir.
What is
We're
the
going to
rabbit
go.
hole?
Go ahead.
He said
go
he
ahead.
talked to Mitterrand.
Go ahead.
in-
You saw the president in Vegas, in California. You've seen the president in South Carolina. You saw him in Michigan. I'll just leave it there. Go ahead.
Didn't mean anything. Makes no sense. How are you going to convince three-quarters of voters who are worried about the physical and mental health that he's okay, even though in Vegas he told a story about recently talking to a French president who died in 1996? I'm not going down that rabbit hole.
Right.
It's not a rabbit hole.
Right.
It's the fact of the polls and the things he's saying that don't make any sense.
Are you referring to the rabbit hole that President Biden was going down?
Folks, you're going to ask
Okay, I want to play this audio
Okay.
too here. More audio from yesterday, and this is here we go.
folks, you're going to ask me questions. Hang on a second. I'm going to be back on Thursday. I don't want to prejudice what may be going on in negotiations now. So I'm not going to be answering any questions of this. I'll be back Thursday to stand here with you and answer all the questions you want about this issue.
And he wasn't taking any questions today, and as was pointed out by Bloomberg and then others, and I checked the public schedule myself, there is no press conference scheduled for today. So simply lie and say, I'll answer all your questions tomorrow, then turn around and walk out. It's just amazing. It really is just amazing what's going on here.
But, they know they can get away with it, and he knows he can get away with it. This is a guy who has lied repeatedly for decades on a number of things that were never true. So for him to say to the media, yeah, I'll answer your questions tomorrow. Yeah, we'll do that. Okay. And he turns around and walks out. That's like a simple lie. That's an easy one for a pro like him.
This was actually written 2 days ago, but we weren't in yesterday, so I want to make sure we hit this because I think it's important to talk about when we talk about the border deal and as we've talked about a lot today, of the fact that this isn't a loss for Republicans. Republicans can defend this very easily. And I was reading National Review, this is the editor's editorial 2 days ago, no to the border deal. The United States has a set of rules intended to exclude illegal immigrants from the country, and our Republicans find themselves negotiating over to what extent those rules can be ignored. What a great point.
Yeah.
The group of senators that worked on a border bill with the White House for months has finally released a text of that bill that is touted as ending catch and release and mandating a shutdown of the border if illegal crossings exceed 5,000 a day. President Joe Biden, who has done much to create a de facto open border since the initial days of his administration, suddenly says this legislation is necessary so he can unleash his inner border hawk. Mm-hmm. The bill is, to be sure, the best bipartisan immigration deal we've seen out of Washington in decades, although that is an extremely low standard, excuse me.
Yeah.
The deal has worthy provisions, but number one, right out exactly what we said. The deal has worthy provisions, but it's not going to compel Joe Biden to do anything he doesn't want to, and further entrenches a system that has been fundamentally distorted by mass bogus asylum claims. The deal appears to be unraveling, and it deserves to do so. Remember, this was 48 hours ago.
Right.
The headline provision in the deal gives the president Title 42 type authority to exclude illegal aliens once there are an average of more than 4,000 illegal crossings a day over 7 days, and mandates that he does so once there are an average of 5,000 over 7 days or 8,500 in a single day. But under current law, the president is already supposed to be excluding all illegal immigrants.
Uh-huh.
There is a limit on how many days a president can use his authority, and the number of days steadily declines each year until it expires after the third. This is clearly an insurance policy against Donald Trump making full use of the authority should he be elected again. The emergency authority would deactivate when the border crossings drop by 75% of the triggering number. This raises a possibility of on-again, off-again border closures when, again, the border is already supposed to be closed to illegal immigrants. Even during a closure, at least 1,400 migrants are supposed to be processed each day at ports of entry, ensuring that the flow of asylum seekers continues regardless. The deal seeks to toughen the credible fear standard that has been loosely applied to wave illegal immigrants en masse through the country. This would be a welcome change, but the bill creates a new process that bypasses the immigration courts and relies notoriously open-handed asylum officers to make the asylum determinations and not the immigration courts. It also dangles the prospect of expedited work permits, adding to the incentive for illegal immigrants to come here. The new asylum process is supposed to run much more quickly than the current system, but there's every reason to believe it, too, will soon be overwhelmed. The deal's supposed to end catch and release, but doesn't live up to its billing, since it gives a Homeland Security Secretary the authority to send migrants to provisional non-custodial removal proceedings. In other words, to release them if they express a fear of persecution or request asylum. Moreover, the bill is careful to preserve the loophole for so-called unaccompanied minors that started the Biden border crisis in the first place, and preserves Biden's parole program for Cubans, Haitians, Venezuelans, and Nicaraguans, as long as our immigration system is in the thrall to the fiction that migrants who are overwhelmingly coming here for jobs are really asylum seekers, and ties itself up into knots considering these largely meritless claims, we are going to have trouble establishing order at the border. As Trump showed in the latter part of his first term, controlling the border requires excluding the migrants from the United States in the first place. Then, barring extraordinary circumstances, anyone making it through the cracks should be detained and removed. The additional resources in the deal for these programs are a good thing. The cause of border security would be advanced much further if Congress dispensed with most of this bill and created a Title 42-style authority that isn't triggered or limited in any way. Prohibiting illegal immigrants from entering the country is the best tool against illegal immigration. As Ronald Reagan said, there are no easy answers, but there are simple ones. There you go. They laid it out right there. That's
right.
why.
Exactly.
Now, that's why the Republicans can win on this with the American public.
Yep. Yeah, there's, and that's because they're already winning on the issue. The American people already agree.
Yep.
And so it's something very basic, as they put here, not easy, but simple. Here's the problem with the Republicans. They have to be able to convey that. It is about the messaging. You win it all day if you can get the messaging right. You're going to have to be able to relay that and show why it was right, show why it's a victory, show why it's a victory for this nation. You have to demonstrate that, and that's what it's not. Don't fumble it. And, but I think the American people right now, it's very clear. There are so many things that I really think are where you can't debate, and they're just solidly broken by this administration. And there's no way to debate that. I saw someone else yesterday trying to make the case that the economy's great. The economy's great. There was actually an assessment by the Wall Street Journal. The economy is good, but there is negative sentiment by the American people. It's because they're struggling. If you don't see that at the Wall Street Journal, I think I bookmarked it on my app.
But the thing is, yesterday, I mean, the thing is, last couple of days, though, the media, this is the mainstream media, Good Morning America, all over the cost of fast food. The whole McDonald's story has really gone viral. And the networks are talking. There's a article, Good Morning America, talking about it, and them even saying, well, inflation's been around, but this is what gets us. Well, yeah, because a lot of times when inflation happens or things get expensive, people have always traditionally said, where can I get a cheap meal? Well, you can't get a cheap meal anymore. So it's something that the masses are aware of. And so that actually popped up just in the last couple of days because of the McDonald's CEO coming out and saying, well, okay, our goal is to make our food more affordable. Well, fast food's supposed to be affordable, but it's not going to be. And I don't know how they make it any way significantly cheaper to bring people in without, basically being a loss leader on some items.
Well, I mean, that's it. Because they're all the goods that they buy, they're going to have to pass that on to the consumer. You could have a couple of loss leaders, but not many. There is no value, so there is no value menu. And that's for anyone writing, in any financial blog or anything else, why is the sentiment? The economy's great. The economy isn't great because the buying power for American families has been depleted and is underwater. It can't keep up. We're reaching delinquencies right now on loans, on credit cards, on these are unsecured revolving credit lines, on auto loans, and automobiles are getting more expensive. Affordability is a term that your grandparents used. It's a almost delusional thought because it doesn't exist anymore. Living below your means. Tell me what that means.
And I saw another article the other day. I just remembered it now. Just popped into my head. I'll see if I can find it. But it was talking about exactly what we said. A lot of the things that people don't buy, that isn't a purchase, something that you need. We include all of those things on inflation. But if you look at things like, as we've talked about before, car insurance, health insurance, food, eating out, all the things that people normally do and have to do, which becomes a regular part of their life, those are the things that are skyrocketing through the roof. Rent, housing, homeowners insurance, car insurance is skyrocketed.
Right.
Cars are up. As we know, used vehicles are up. The interest rates are up, and those are the things that people actually use every single day.
Slightly reworded the headline at Wall Street Journal now. It's interesting because on the app it was basically the economy's strong. So why are so many Americans down? So here it is now reworded. Wall Street Journal. Why Americans are so down on a strong economy. So it's not essentially from the point of wondering, well, why is everybody, and that's the thing in the media. You better get your perspective right. And they did change the perspective in changing that headlines. Well, here is why they're down. And it goes, through what we've mentioned. The spending power has been depleted to where now the spending power is probably for a long time, people are underwater, so their spending power is underwater.
Well, the fact that they're still questioning this and surprised by it either shows they're stupid or
they think people are stupid.
Or they think people are stupid, and we'll get to that coming up. 866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. At a roadside inspection, inspectors may ask to see supporting documents. A supporting document is a document generated or received by a motor carrier in the normal course of business that can be used by law enforcement to verify a driver's logs. These documents can include bills of lading, itineraries, schedules, or equivalent documents that indicate the origin and destination of each trip. They can also include dispatch or trip records, expense receipts related to on-duty/not driving periods, including receipts for meals, lodging, and fuel, electronic mobile communication transmitted through a fleet management system, and payroll records, settlement sheets, or equivalent documents that indicate payment to a driver. Drivers using paper logs must also keep toll receipts. Supporting documents must contain the driver's name, carrier-assigned identification number or vehicle unit number that can be linked to the driver, the date, the name of the nearest city, town, or village, and the time. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. We are Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Hurley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Attorney General Garland notified congressional lawmakers as special counsel Robert Hur has submitted his final report after months of investigating President Biden's alleged improper retention of classified records. Garland, in a letter to the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan and the rest of the leadership, said he submitted the final report on Monday to the Justice Department. Prior to submitting his report to me, Special Counsel Hur engaged with the White House and their General Counsel Office and the President's personal counsel to allow comments on the report that included review by the White House Counsel's Office for Executive Privilege, consistent with the President's constitutional prerogatives. Garland said the White House privilege review has not yet concluded. As I've made clear regarding each special counsel who served since I've taken office, I'm committed to making us as much of the special counsel's report public as possible, consistent with legal requirements and department policy, Garland wrote. We shall see. Garland vowed to produce to Congress a report and also having a letter from the counsel following completion of the White House's privileged review. So there you go. Now, does this mean that then after the report that comes out, the special counsel will testify?
Well, that we don't know yet, right?
That's what you would expect, that he would testify at least in front of the House.
Because the
Senate won't want him.
Yeah, because
Democrats in the Senate won't want to bring him up.
Yeah, because we've talked about the role of special counsel in any situation. Basically, their report, they owe it to the AG, and then we'll see what the AG does with it. But you would think there would be a call for testimony.
Well, the biggest thing is going to be comparing. The Republicans want as much information of what's in this report as possible. To compare it to Trump.
Yep. Oh, this.
Yeah.
That testimony could go on for a while. I have a lot of questions myself.
Autonomous individuals in unison. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right. Want to play this audio from yesterday. This is Ted Cruz with other Republican senators. And, one of the things, because it would be too long to play everything. I mean, they talked for a long, long time yesterday. And who was it? I believe. Oh, okay. Actually, it was the day before on the 6th where J.D. Vance said, people are reporting that basically whatever the deal was, Republicans were going to be, in favor of it, that we're going to vote for this in order to get it. He goes, that wasn't the case. there was no guarantee of whatever negotiated Republicans would vote for at all, because that was the impression was, and that's why I said, I know you'd seen 20, but I'd seen the day before, that at least 12 Republican senators, will vote against this bill. When 12, what are you talking about? Well, it ended up that every one of the Republican senators except 4 voted against it. And on the other side, it was actually 5 liberals, 4 Democrats, and Bernie Sanders, who's considered an independent,
right,
that voted against it. So as we said, it was in a bipartisan fashion defeated.
Both parties came to, for the populists, both parties came together and worked in unison to defeat the bill.
This bill. And so we want to play Ted Cruz here because he actually gives a couple of points. Here's why it was a bad bill. Here we go.
Every once in a while we have some good news. The good news is this bill is dead. Now, my views on this bill have not been ambiguous. At the last press conference we had here, I described it as, quote, a steaming pile of crap. Some people afterwards criticized that characterization. Can't imagine why. And they said, well, you haven't read the text, so how can you say that? And you're right. All I knew was what had been described by the bill sponsors. Well, now we've seen the text, and it turned out my assessment was far too kind. This bill is a terrible bill. I'm going to break it down on two metrics. Number 1, policy, and number 2, politics. On policy, why is this bill a terrible bill? Because it does not solve the problem. We have the worst rate of illegal immigration in our nation's history. People are dying. Children are being brutalized. Women are being sexually assaulted. Over 100,000 people died of overdoses last year. This bill doesn't fix it. Understand, this border crisis is deliberate. Joe Biden caused it. He caused it by his own unilateral decisions. 3 decisions caused this crisis, all made the first week of his presidency. He inherited the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years, and his first week as president, he halted construction on the border wall, he reinstated the disastrous policy of catch and release, and he pulled out of the unbelievably successful Remain in Mexico agreement. That caused this explosion. It also means Joe Biden could solve it tomorrow. How would he solve it tomorrow? By reversing those 3 decisions, and you would get, once again, a secure border. Joe Biden doesn't want to secure the border. Kamala Harris doesn't want to secure the border. Chuck Schumer doesn't want to secure the border. And this bill was designed not to secure the border. Instead, this bill codified Joe Biden's open borders. This bill codified catch and release. Catch and release is contrary to law. But if we'd have passed this bill, catch and release would be right there in the U.S. Code. This bill normalized 5,000 illegal immigrants a day. 5,000 illegal immigrants a day works out to roughly 1.8 million a year. We've seen 9.6 million illegal immigrants under Joe Biden. Apparently, the Republican position was going to be, we don't like your 9.6, but we're okay with 2/3 of that illegal immigration. That was ridiculous. This bill gave work permits to illegal immigrants. This bill gave government-funded lawyers to illegal immigrants. You know, one of the provisions that I personally find most noxious, this bill goes directly after the state of Texas. And it says all litigation about immigration, you can't sue in Texas anymore. You got to come to Washington, D.C., to one of the most liberal courts in the country. Texas, sorry, we're throwing you out of court in Texas. You got to come to D.C. As I observed on X last night, one sane Republican would side with Joe Biden over the state of Texas in this battle to secure the border. That's what this bill did.
There you go. What's interesting is when you and I first came in, and this would have been Tuesday morning, I believe, when we were, was it Tuesday morning or, no, Monday morning when we came in. It was Monday, because they released the text of it on Sunday.
Sunday, yeah.
And you and I, because we woke up at 10 o'clock and, that's when I wake up 10 o'clock and got to come into work. And so you and I, this thing's 370 pages. There's no way that we can read it. Right. So we're trying to scan it. I mean, we're trying to scan it and pick out everything. And it's amazing that the stuff that we picked out of it, just scanning it, even though there was a lot we weren't able to read, ended up being correct.
Yeah.
Ended up being, well, that's why you can't do it, because the incentives remain. You can get a lawyer. Good. It's going to be paid for by the taxpayer.
Right.
It's another benefit that I get.
Right.
Taxpayer lawyer by the United States. This can keep my asylum claim going longer because now I've got a lawyer that's paid for.
Right.
That's another incentive for people to cross, the United States, being that you can get a work permit, another incentive to come into the United States. And one thing that Ted Cruz didn't bring up, nothing in the bill compelled the president to do these things. None of it.
Right.
Because the president had the options to do whatever he wanted and could call an emergency when he could call the emergency on the emergency.
Yeah.
The bill stunk.
Well, and the word discretion, as we looked it up in the bill itself, appeared 12 times in the text of the bill. It's way too much discretion. When we're talking about the head of the Department of Homeland Security, and in the current case, Mayorkas, discretion, Mayorkas gets discretion. And as Senator Cruz points out, something we've said, it codifies it. It's no longer a misinterpretation of the law, a bending of the law, breaking of the law, rewriting of the law through executive order. It is creating it and making it the law. The open border would be open as a matter of law.
Right.
Hell and no. Because why, at that point, then, what are we doing?
And the reason I played that portion of Cruz, and there was a lot of explanation from a lot of the senators, and it all made sense. And after watching everything yesterday and then seeing, well, even some, on social media, especially conservatives saying, well, they just gave all the arguing points to Democrats. Yeah. No, they didn't. Because when you go through it, it's like, no, yeah, you're right. No, it didn't. And all the Democrats are stating is the fact that Biden, this is what the Democrats are trying to convince the American public, Biden has been helpless all this time.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The only reason that the border is open is because Congress has not told Biden what to do. But Biden is completely helpless. He did nothing to change policy at the border, which is an outright lie. We know he did.
Yeah.
But they just ignored as if it didn't happen, that Biden is this helpless child who had nothing to do with the increase or the influx of illegal immigrants to and then across the border. He is simply this helpless president that had no recourse whatsoever until Congress and the Republicans told him what to do. That is the biggest piece of a heaping, steaming pile of you-know-what that's out there. And it's not, I don't believe, if the Republicans effectively communicate, Democrats do not win on this politically.
Do you know how long he's been helpless? More than 1,000 days.
Over 3 years. It's been 3 years.
It's funny, and that's a throwback to earlier in the show, but honestly...
And Karine Jean-Pierre.
But that's what they want you to believe, is that he's never had the power when it's the first thing that he did.
Right.
As Senator Cruz points out, you look at the three major things that he did that caused this. And you can't debate it. You can ignore it.
Right. You can pretend it didn't exist, but you can't debate what he did. Biden caused this situation at the border. He could reverse it.
Yep.
He chooses not to, and then they come up with a border bill that codifies an open border,
Yeah.
more or less, because remember when Jay Johnson said 1,000 encounters a day is unsustainable.
Right.
Well, it's 5,000 now.
Right.
It was funny because I was in the conversation with an acquaintance yesterday who said, well, they can't get to zero, so 5,000. What do you mean? Why can't they get to zero?
Yeah, why not?
The current law says zero.
Yeah.
Why would you take the current law?
You enforce it as zero.
Right. Even if you can't reach it,
Right.
you enforce it that way.
Right.
The person there was silence at that point.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, you can't argue.
Well,
cannot argue Ted Cruz's point, and you cannot argue that the president is a helpless victim in all of this because Republicans haven't told him what to do.
You know how many bank robberies are legal? 0. Does it mean there are 0 bank robberies? I mean, that was their argument, basically. Oh, we can't ever get to 0. I was waiting for them to go, well, this is the new normal. Under Biden, yeah.
That would have been a perfect.
This is the new normal on the border.
Well, that's the old normal. We're dealing with the new normal here. We need to deal with what we're dealing now.
Yeah.
And if it's 4,000, it's not as much as 5,000 that's happening right now, and we've gone over that. And so the border would be closed today if this was law. Well, if the president chose.
Yeah, exactly.
To.
Yeah, which he's not going to.
Which he hasn't under the current law that he won't enforce.
And it permanently puts that in place for future presidents.
And by the way, every Democrat listening knows they're not stupid. They know what happened here, and they may politically say, "Well, no, it's the Republicans." They know they're full of it.
It's like when Obama did the Iran deal. They're arguing like the liberals that were trying to defend Obama. Then, well, at least he did something. Well, at least we're doing something. No, you're not. Actually, you're making it worse by breaking the border and making a broken border the law. That's what you're doing. It's something, all right.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Quickly, let's go to Bill in Florida. Bill, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi, Bill.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for having me on this morning. I listen to you regularly, and I appreciate the information.
Thanks.
I am, however, a little confused because you're welcome. I am a little confused because I truly don't understand why we need additional laws. You know, I'm a registered Republican, but I'm more mainstream. I'm in my mid-60s. I make about $70,000 a year, and I'm not really dialed in. I wouldn't classify myself as a MAGA guy. I vote for policies, not people. I'm very open-minded, and for the life of me, there's two things I can't figure out, and one is who benefits. Like, nobody's ever stood up and said, hey, the benefit of letting these people in is this. So I've heard stuff about, like, hey, we need people to pick crops and we need people to vote Democrat, but I can't believe that be it. And the final point is, one of the things I appreciated about the previous administration is they had a sleeper regulation in there that I thought was genius, and that is for every new regulation you put into force, you have to remove 2 regulations. So I lean libertarian that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I love that.
Government, less laws. I don't understand it.
You asked a question, Bill, and it's a good question. We asked that the other night. Why do we need a new bill? We have a law, because I made the joke, hey, I've got a great bill. It's actually already the law that you can enforce the border. Now, in terms of why do we need people to come here, now, as we expand the economy, we are going to need more workers. And Donald Trump said that as president. In fact, it was the conversation he was having with Jim Acosta the day Jim Acosta
Right,
got
but
banned.
his question is, why do Democrats want them to come across the border?
Yes.
What's the advantage? And it's
But I wanted to throw that in
But quickly,
from-
it's the census.
Yes, exactly.
It's
exactly.
they
for
count.
them.
They count for the census for
Exactly.
your, and if they're in your state,
Right.
they count.
Right. Exactly.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.